My parents threw me out at 10, but Grandma took me in. At her will reading after she passed, my parents told me, "You were never part of this family, you were adopted when we had no kids." Then the lawyer gave me an envelope that changed everything. Dear viewers, please kindly sit back, relax and enjoy this amazing story on Stories by Yujay. Please do support us by hitting on the subscribe button, like and share the video to your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now let's dive into the main story. My name is Amelia Stone, and I am 32 years old. I remember the day it happened with a clarity that still makes my breath catch in my throat. I was 10, a small, quiet girl who loved to read and hated loud noises. Our house, a sprawling suburban home with manicured lawns in Connecticut, always felt too big, too empty, despite my parents, Robert and Eleanor Vance, being constantly present. They were, to put it mildly, emotionally distant. My father, a successful but stern corporate lawyer, and my mother, a meticulously groomed socialite, viewed me more as an accessory than a child. My existence seemed to be an inconvenience, a disruption to their perfectly curated lives. There were no outbursts, no dramatic fights leading up to it. Just a chilling, calculated detachment. One crisp autumn evening, after I'd finished my homework and was quietly drawing at the kitchen table, they called me into the living room. The air was thick with an unspoken tension. My father sat in his armchair, a stoic expression on his face, while my mother perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes avoiding mine. "Amelia," my father began, his voice devoid of emotion, "your mother and I have made a decision." He paused, and I braced myself, a knot forming in my stomach. I thought perhaps I was being sent to a new boarding school, a possibility that, while unsettling, I had grown to expect given their constant search for ways to outsource my upbringing. "We feel it's best if you no longer live here." My world tilted. I must have misheard. No longer live here. My home. My 10-year-old brain struggled to process the words. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. My mother finally looked at me, her gaze cold and unyielding. "It's for the best, Amelia. We're simply not equipped to provide you with the environment you need." The words were like sharp shards of ice. Environment. Was I a plant? Pet? I felt my eyes welling up, but I fought back the tears. Crying never helped with them. It only seemed to solidify their disdain. "You'll be going to live with Grandma Rose," my father added, as if announcing a trip to the grocery store. "She's expecting you. Your things are already packed." My things were packed. Without my knowledge, without a single conversation, my life had been dismantled and rearranged. My small suitcase sat by the front door, a stark symbol of my sudden displacement. It hit me then. This wasn't a punishment for something I'd done. This was a dismissal. Casting off. I was 10 and my parents were throwing me out. I walked to the front door, the silence of the house suffocating me. No hugs, no reassurances, no tears from them. Just the cold, clinical reality of their decision. My father opened the door, and I stepped out into the twilight, the setting sun casting long, mournful shadows. A taxi was waiting, its engine idling softly. I looked back at the house, a place that was supposed to be my sanctuary but had become my prison. My parents stood framed in the doorway, two distant figures, unmoving, unfeeling. The drive to Grandma Rose's house was a blur of unshed tears and a deepening sense of abandonment. Grandma Rose lived in a charming, slightly disheveled Victorian house in a smaller tree-lined town just an hour away. It was a place I'd visited occasionally, mostly for holidays, always feeling a sense of quiet comfort there that was absent in my own home. She met me at the door, her face etched with a mix of sorrow and fierce determination. She didn't ask questions, didn't pry. She simply gathered me into a warm embrace, a genuine hug that I hadn't felt in years, if ever, from my own parents. Her scent, a comforting mix of lavender and old books, was the first real comfort I'd felt all day. "Oh, my dear Amelia," she murmured, her voice soft and laced with a kindness I desperately craved. She led me inside, her hand warm and firm on my back. The house was filled with the gentle ticking of clocks, the scent of fresh-baked cookies, and an overwhelming sense of belonging that was entirely new to me. That night, she let me cry into her shoulder, her hand stroking my hair. She didn't offer platitudes or explanations for my parents' actions. She just held me, letting me release the storm of grief and confusion that had been brewing inside me. In her arms, I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark in the vast darkness that had enveloped me. My parents had discarded me, but Grandma Rose had opened her arms, her home, and her heart. It was the beginning of a different life, one I never could have imagined, but one that, in time, would become the truest home I'd ever known. Life with Grandma Rose was a stark contrast, filled with warmth and genuine love, nurturing me into a confident young woman, far from the shadows of my past. My new life with Grandma Rose unfolded like a gentle, healing balm. Her home, unlike the sterile perfection of my parents' house, hummed with life. The scent of cinnamon and brewing tea was a constant, comforting presence. Dust motes danced in sunbeams filtering through lace curtains, and every surface held a story. Stacks of well-loved books, ceramic figurines, framed photographs of people I vaguely recognized but knew were part of our family history. Grandma Rose, with her silver hair always neatly pinned and her kind eyes that seemed to hold endless understanding, was everything my parents weren't. She was patient, she was present, and most importantly, she truly saw me. She never forced me to talk about that day, about the abandonment. Instead, she created a space where I felt safe enough to heal at my own pace. She'd sit with me in the evenings, reading aloud from classic stories. Her voice a soothing cadence that lulled me into a sense of peace. She taught me to bake her famous apple pie, patiently guiding my small hands as I kneaded dough. We spent hours in her garden, planting flowers and vegetables, her explaining the miracle of growth and resilience, lessons that subtly seeped into my own wounded spirit. It was in these small, everyday moments that the gaping hole in my heart began to mend. Grandma Rose was a woman of quiet wisdom and unwavering strength. She taught me the importance of kindness, the power of perseverance, and the value of self-reliance. She encouraged my love for books, taking me to the local library every week, where I'd lose myself for hours among the shelves. She celebrated my small victories. A good grade on a test, a drawing I was proud of, a new friend made at school. School, initially a terrifying prospect, became another source of comfort. The teachers were supportive, and I slowly started to form friendships, something that had always felt impossible when I lived with my parents. I was no longer the quiet, invisible girl. With Grandma Rose's unwavering belief in me, I began to blossom. As I grew older, the memories of my parents faded, replaced by the vibrant tapestry of life with Grandma Rose. They never called, never visited. Not once. It was as if I had vanished from their lives completely. A part of me, the still wounded child, yearned for some sign, some acknowledgement, but the growing strength I found in Grandma Rose's love gradually eclipsed that longing. I learned to let go of the pain, understanding that their inability to love me was a reflection of their own emptiness, not a defect in me. Grandma Rose instilled in me a quiet confidence, a belief that I was worthy of love, worthy of happiness, regardless of my past. High school was a period of immense growth. I excelled academically, driven by a desire to make Grandma Rose proud. I joined the debate club, finding my voice in articulate arguments, a stark contrast to the silent child I once was. I even became editor of the school newspaper, pouring my heart into stories that mattered to our community. Grandma Rose attended every school play, every award ceremony, her eyes shining with pride, her applause the loudest and most heartfelt in the room. She was my anchor, my biggest cheerleader, my truest family. When it came time for college applications, Grandma Rose was my unwavering support. We spent hours researching universities, discussing majors, and drafting essays. I was accepted into several good universities, ultimately choosing one with a strong liberal arts program, just a few hours' drive from Grandma Rose, so I could visit frequently. Leaving her, even for college, was bittersweet. She saw me off with a tearful hug, pressing a small, intricately carved wooden bird into my hand. "A symbol of freedom, my dear," she whispered. Fly high, Amelia, and never forget how loved you are. College was a whirlwind of new experiences, intellectual challenges, and blossoming independence. I thrived, making lifelong friends and excelling in my studies. Every break, every holiday, I rushed back to Grandma Rose's welcoming embrace. Her home was always my sanctuary, a place of unconditional love and acceptance. I would tell her about my classes, my friends, my dreams, and she would listen, truly listen, offering gentle guidance and boundless encouragement. Life felt full, rich, and meaningful. The scars of my past had not vanished entirely, but they had faded, becoming faint reminders of a journey that had ultimately led me to the profound and enduring love of my grandmother. I was a confident, capable young woman, ready to face the world, all thanks to the steadfast love and unwavering support of Grandma Rose. She wasn't just my grandmother. She was my mother, my mentor, my truest family. And I cherished every single moment I had with her. Grandma Rose's sudden decline and passing left me adrift, facing the profound grief of losing my only true family, and the daunting task of navigating her final wishes. The years flew by, each one cementing the bond between Grandma Rose and me. I graduated from college with honors, secured a promising job in marketing, and even found a cozy apartment not too far from her, ensuring our weekly dinners remained a cherished ritual. Life finally felt stable and filled with purpose. The past, though a part of my story, no longer defined me. It was a distant echo, softened by years of Grandma Rose's unwavering love. She was my constant, the unshakable foundation upon which I had built my adult life. Then the first tremor hit. It was subtle at first, a forgotten name here, a misplaced set of keys there. We brushed them off as normal signs of aging. Grandma Rose was in her late 70s after all, and still remarkably spry. But the tremors grew into undeniable shifts. Conversations would loop, familiar faces would momentarily become strangers, and a quiet confusion would cloud her usually sharp eyes. My heart sank with each new development, a creeping dread taking root. The woman who had been my rock, my protector, was slowly, imperceptibly slipping away. We went to doctors, specialists. The diagnosis, when it finally came, was a cruel blow. Advanced Alzheimer's. The words hung in the air like a death knell. There was no cure, only management, a slowing of the inevitable decline. My world, so recently vibrant and secure, began to crack. I felt a familiar, chilling echo of abandonment, but this time it was a biological process, a cruel twist of fate, not a deliberate act of dismissal. Yet the feeling was just as raw, just as terrifying. I became her primary caregiver, balancing my demanding job with the increasingly complex needs of my beloved grandmother. I learned to administer medication, to navigate her moments of confusion with gentle patience, to ensure her safety. I read every book I could find on Alzheimer's, desperate to understand, to somehow stem the tide. There were good days, moments of fleeting clarity where her old spark would return, and we'd share a laugh or a knowing glance. Those were the days I clung to, the fleeting glimpses of the woman who had saved me. But there were more difficult days, filled with disorientation, agitation, and the heartbreaking realization that she no longer recognized me. It was during one of these particularly difficult periods that my parents resurfaced. An email, cold and formal, arrived in my inbox. It was from my father, Robert Vance, informing me that my grandmother's health was of some concern to them, and that they wished to discuss her care. Where had they been for the past 2 decades? The audacity of their sudden interest, after years of complete silence, stung deeply. I drafted a polite but firm reply, stating that Grandma Rose was well cared for, and I was handling everything. I didn't mention her condition. I didn't want their pity, and I certainly didn't want their interference. This was my responsibility, my love, my grief to bear. The last few months were the hardest. Grandma Rose became almost entirely bedridden, her body frail, her mind lost in a world only she could see. I spent every spare moment by her side, holding her hand, humming the lullabies she used to sing to me, whispering words of love and gratitude. I knew our time was drawing to a close. The house, once filled with her gentle presence, now felt heavy with an impending emptiness. I found myself clinging to every last moment, terrified of the silence that would follow. She passed peacefully in her sleep, one quiet morning in late spring. The sun was just rising, casting a soft glow through her bedroom window. I found her still and serene, a faint smile on her lips. The grief that washed over me was a tidal wave, unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was the profound, aching loss of the only person who had ever truly loved me unconditionally, the only true family I had ever known. The pain was unbearable, a physical ache in my chest. Yet, beneath the sorrow, there was also a profound sense of gratitude. She had given me a life, a purpose, a sense of belonging I never thought I'd find. Arranging her funeral was a blur. Friends and neighbors, people whose lives Grandma Rose had touched with her quiet kindness, came to offer their condolences. I delivered the eulogy, my voice thick with emotion, recounting her unwavering spirit, her boundless generosity, and the immeasurable impact she had on my life. I didn't mention my parents. They weren't there, and their absence was, by then, a familiar and expected silence. Their lives had no connection to the beautiful, loving existence Grandma Rose had woven for me. A week after the funeral, I received a formal letter from Mr. Davies, Grandma Rose's longtime lawyer, requesting my presence for the reading of her will. The envelope was thick, the paper crisp. I felt a mix of apprehension and sadness. Even in her passing, Grandma Rose had a way of bringing a sense of order and peace. I knew she had meticulously planned everything, and I trusted her implicitly. But facing the finality of her wishes, the last tangible piece of her presence, felt overwhelmingly heavy. I clutched the letter, a solitary figure in a suddenly very empty house, steeling myself for the next chapter of grief. The will reading brought an unwelcome reunion with my parents, whose shocking declaration about my adoption was swiftly overshadowed by Mr. Davies's unexpected revelation that turned their cruelty on its head. The day of the will reading arrived, shrouded in a heavy atmosphere of formality and unspoken tension. Mr. Davies's office was in an old brick building downtown, its interior smelling faintly of lemon polish and aged paper. I arrived punctually, my heart thumping with a mix of dread and melancholy. I was still raw from Grandma Rose's passing, and the thought of facing my parents again, after so many years of their deliberate absence, felt like an unnecessary cruelty. They were already there when I walked in. Robert and Eleanor Vance, sitting stiffly on the ornate chairs opposite Mr. Davies's imposing desk. My father, with his thinning gray hair and perpetually stern expression, looked older, but no less formidable. My mother, impeccably dressed as always, had a brittle elegance, her gaze flickering towards me then quickly away, as if my presence was an unwelcome disruption to her carefully composed facade. There was no greeting, no acknowledgement, just a cold, palpable silence that filled the room. It was as if 2 decades had simply vanished, and we were back in that living room, with them on one side and me, the unwanted child, on the other. Mr. Davies, a kind-faced man with a gentle demeanor, cleared his throat, sensing the palpable unease. "Amelia, Robert, Eleanor," he began, his voice calm and steady. "Thank you for coming. As you know, we are here today for the reading of Rose Vance's last will and testament." He gestured for us to sit. I took a chair slightly apart from my parents, instinctively creating a buffer between us. He began by reading the standard legal preamble, his voice droning on about dates and legal clauses. My mind drifted, thinking of Grandma Rose, of her quiet strength, her unwavering love. I wondered if she knew the chaos her passing would stir, even in this small, controlled setting. Then Mr. Davies got to the core of the will. He detailed a few small bequests to various charities and a distant cousin, before finally arriving at the main beneficiaries. He announced that her beloved Victorian house, her modest savings, and all her personal effects were to be bequeathed entirely to me, Amelia Stone. A gasp escaped my mother's lips. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing to slits. The quiet atmosphere instantly crackled with their indignation. "Excuse me, Mr. Davies," my father interjected. His voice sharp, cutting through the lawyer's calm recitation. Are you certain that is correct? Rose had a son, her only son, myself. And a daughter-in-law. Surely, her primary assets would go to us. Mr. Davies paused, adjusting his spectacles. Mr. Vance, the will is very clear. It explicitly states that all major assets are to be left to Amelia Stone. He then read a specific clause in Grandma Rose's own handwriting, appended to the official document. To my dearest Amelia, who has been the light of my life and the true daughter of my heart. May this provide you with the security and happiness you so richly deserve. My mother scoffed, a short, disbelieving sound. This is ridiculous. Amelia was never truly part of this family. She was adopted. The words hung in the air, sudden and sharp, aimed directly at me, meant to wound. Yes, she continued, emboldened by the revelation. Robert and I adopted her when we thought we couldn't have children. But then, you see, we had Eleanor, our real daughter. Amelia was just a placeholder. An experiment, really. You were never part of this family, Amelia. You were adopted when we had no kids. The room spun. Adopted. The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. All these years, all the coldness, the rejection, the feeling of being an outsider. It suddenly made a terrible, twisted kind of sense. But it was also a gut punch, shattering the last fragile remnants of the illusion of a biological connection to these two people. My parents, the ones who had thrown me out, were not even my biological parents. It was a truth delivered with such cruel nonchalance, designed to strip away any claim I might have, any right to grief or inheritance. I felt a surge of nausea, followed by a searing anger. Not for the adoption itself, but for the callous way it was revealed, for the years of silence, for the explicit intent to diminish me, even in my grandmother's will reading. My father, seeing my stunned silence, nodded curtly. Exactly. She has no claim to anything truly belonging to the Vance family. This will is surely a mistake, Mr. Davies. Rose must have been confused in her final days. Mr. Davies remained unruffled. He looked directly at me, his gaze sympathetic, almost apologetic. He reached into a drawer in his desk and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. With all due respect, Mr. and Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice firm. Rose Vance was of sound mind when this will was executed. And as for Amelia's connection to your family, there is something else that I was instructed to give to Amelia, and only to Amelia at this precise moment. He held out the envelope, its heavy cream paper bearing my grandmother's familiar elegant script. For my Amelia, when the time is right. My hand trembled as I took it, my eyes fixed on the familiar handwriting. My parents watched, their expressions a mixture of confusion and growing apprehension. They clearly hadn't anticipated this. This, Mr. Davies continued, gesturing to the envelope, was to be delivered to Amelia only after her parents. Your parents, Amelia, revealed the truth about your adoption. It was Rose's wish that you understand the full context of your history, directly from them, before learning the truth she wanted to share with you. My heart hammered against my ribs. What truth? What could be in this envelope that Grandma Rose had held onto for so long, to be revealed at such a precise, agonizing moment? Their cruel revelation about my adoption suddenly paled in comparison to the weight of the sealed letter in my hand. The room was silent save for the pounding in my ears. The lawyer had just given me an envelope that, I instinctively knew, would change everything. The letter from Grandma Rose revealed a shocking family secret, exposing my true parentage and her lifelong sacrifice, ultimately empowering me to reclaim my identity and find peace. I tore open the envelope, my fingers fumbling with the seal, a sense of urgency propelling me forward. My parents watched, their faces now a mixture of confusion and a dawning, terrible apprehension. The crisp paper inside held Grandma Rose's familiar handwriting, not the formal script of a will, but the intimate, flowing cursive of a personal letter. My eyes scanned the first lines, and my breath hitched. My dearest Amelia, it began. If you are reading this, It means that Robert and Eleanor have finally revealed a small piece of the truth, though undoubtedly for their own selfish reasons. But there is a greater truth, my sweet girl, one they could never tell you because it exposes their deepest shame, and my profound love for you. My gaze darted to my parents. They shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere, the sudden charged energy emanating from me. The letter continued, each word a revelation, a blow that shattered my understanding of my past and meticulously rebuilt it. Amelia, you are not adopted. Not by Robert and Eleanor, at least not in the way they want you to believe. You are my daughter, Amelia. My biological daughter. And Robert is your father, my son. The world went silent. My own father was my brother. My grandmother was my mother. The words twisted in my mind, a grotesque, impossible puzzle. I felt a wave of dizziness, and I gripped the armrests of my chair, my knuckles white. It was a terrible secret, a desperate time, Grandma Rose's letter explained, her words a soothing yet heartbreaking whisper on the page. Robert was young, barely out of college, and so terribly reckless. I was a widow, struggling to make ends meet after your grandfather passed. We made a mistake, a tragic error in judgment born of grief and confusion. When I realized I was pregnant, the shame, the scandal. It would have ruined us both, especially Robert's fledgling career, his reputation. I could hear the hushed gasps from Robert and Eleanor across the table. They knew. This was the secret. We decided to keep it hidden. Robert and Eleanor had just married, and they were struggling to conceive. They had always spoken of adopting. It seemed at the time to be the only way. A desperate solution to two desperate problems. We told everyone that they adopted you shortly after your birth. It was a lie, a terrible, agonizing lie that I have carried with me every single day of your life. But I did it to protect Robert, to protect you from the stigma, and to give you a family name, even if it was a false one. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. A family name. The name they had used to cast me out. The irony was a sharp, cutting pain. I knew deep down it was a cruel burden to place on you and on them. But I believed, naively perhaps, that they would grow to love you, to cherish you as their own, regardless of the deception. I visited quietly as often as I could, always pretending to be your grandmother. My heart broke every time I saw their coldness, their indifference towards you. My heart broke completely when they sent you away, my precious child, my own flesh and blood. That day when they brought you to me, was the day I swore I would never let anything hurt you again. It was the day I truly became your mother, in every way that mattered. Tears streamed down my face, hot and furious, blurring the words on the page. Not tears of sadness, but of a profound, shattering understanding. The coldness, the dismissal, the feeling of being an outsider. It wasn't because I was adopted. It was because I was a living, breathing testament to their shame, to their carefully constructed lie. And Grandma Rose, my beautiful, selfless Grandma Rose, had borne the weight of that secret, had loved me fiercely, silently, while playing the role of a grandmother. I have kept this letter, this truth, for so long, unsure if it was my place to reveal it. But when I began to fade, I knew you deserved to know who you truly are, and why you were treated the way you were. You are not a mistake, Amelia. You are my greatest joy, a child born of a desperate circumstance, but loved with an unconditional depth that transcends all secrets and lies. Your true mother loved you more than life itself. And your true father, though misguided and flawed, is also my son. I looked up, my eyes red and swollen, meeting Robert's. His face was ashen, drained of all color. His usual composure utterly shattered. Eleanor, beside him, had her hand clasped over her mouth, her eyes wide with a horrified realization that their secret, their carefully guarded shame, was now exposed, not by me, but by the very woman who had enabled their deception. "It's true," Robert whispered, his voice barely audible, a broken confession. "It's all true." The confession hung in the air, a final confirmation of the unspeakable. Mr. Davies, understanding the profound personal drama unfolding, quietly pushed a box of tissues across the table. The last paragraph of Grandma Rose's letter was a testament to her enduring love and foresight. With this truth, my Amelia, I hope you find not just answers but freedom. The house, the savings, everything I have is yours. It is my legacy of love, a foundation for you to build a life free from the shadows of our past. You are a strong, brilliant, and compassionate woman. Never forget your worth. Never doubt how deeply you were, and always will be, loved. Live your life fully, my dear. You deserve all the happiness the world has to offer. My love, always and forever, Rose. I folded the letter, clutching it to my chest. The room was silent once more, but this time it was a silence filled with the weight of revelation, not just of a will, but of an entire life unraveled and rewoven. My parents sat there, defeated, their lies laid bare. And I, Amelia Stone, was no longer the discarded child, the unwanted placeholder. I was the beloved daughter of a remarkable woman, a survivor, and for the first time I felt truly, completely free. My identity, long obscured by others' deceptions, was finally mine. Life's deepest wounds can sometimes lead to its most profound loves. Embrace the truth of your own story, for within it lies the power to define your future, unburdened by the deceptions of others. Your journey of self-discovery is a testament to resilience, and the love that truly nurtures you is the only legacy that truly matters.